Y'all know what it is.
Hey everybody, I'm Ryan and welcome back to Eggs. This week we have a unique episode for you going way back in time to feature one of my favorite interviews from the past. Why, you ask? Well, for people who didn't catch last week's show, for the next little bit, approximately the next 12 weeks, we're going to be doing things a little bit differently around here. As discussed at length on last week's show, my favorite co-host and yours has begun an exciting new adventure. Mike is presently taking part in a super intensive web development bootcamp as part of a big career pivot he's exploring. Off air, he and I have talked and he's explained that he's presently programming from 10 a.m. to midnight, doing classwork and homework, and recording this show at our regular cadence simply isn't doable for him. That said, we're working diligently to put together some fun programming for you and take advantage of this break in our regularly scheduled program. More on that in coming weeks, but let's chat about today's drop. Today we're going way back in time to July 2019 for one of my all-time favorite interviews with author, speaker, and philanthropist Michael G. Dash. Michael's story is one wrought with ups and downs from drug and gambling addiction to building multi-million-dollar businesses. At the time, he appeared in person on Eggs from our downtown Salt Lake City studio. He was promoting his book, Chasing the High, which details his story in all of its gritty details so that those he encounters or works with as part of his FATE program can learn from his experience. I'm really excited to share this show with new listeners who might have missed it, and even more for the OGs who've heard it before but could benefit from hearing it again. So without any further ado, please join me in going all the way back to a pre-COVID world, July 11th, 2019, for a conversation with Michael G. Dash. Let's go.
Hey everybody, welcome back to another special edition of Eggs. This week we have special guest Michael G. Dash. Michael Dash is an entrepreneur, business owner, author, speaker, coach, and philanthropist, available for speaking engagements both for young people and for active professionals. Mike has had a collection of unique experiences from chasing the high with his prior gambling and drug addiction to overcoming adversity when his business partner conspired against him. Despite these challenges, Michael persevered and built a thriving business, bringing more than $5 million in revenue each year. Michael's experiences give him a unique perspective and mindset that he imparts to audiences to help them lead their best lives personally and professionally. So, without any further ado, welcome our special guest, author of the new book, Chasing the High, Michael G. Dash.
Hey, Michael. How's it going?
Thank you very much. It's going great. I am ready for some eggs.
All right. Well, yeah, no, thanks so much for making this happen. I guess you've got a big book release coming out tomorrow, a big book release event, I should say. The new book is out. Let me hold that up and show everybody. This is what it looks like. It's called Chasing the High. It's available now. Where can people find it?
They can find it on Amazon or just go to the link chasingthehighbook.com.
Perfect.
Excellent. So we've been trying to get this kind of thing or this show in the works for a couple weeks. We rescheduled a couple times and everything. So thank you so much for making this work. Really glad to have you while you're in town. I guess you're not a Salt Lake local anymore. So that's great. So let's go back and sort of start at the beginning. So the premise of this show is that we sort of go back and explore people's processes and sort of their lives or careers, sort of from coop to table, so to speak. So the idea is that, we track somebody's career or whatever from sort of beginning, middle to end. Yours sounds like there's a lot of highs and a lot of lows in there. So it'd be really interesting to hear. So if we can talk a little bit about you, who are you and where do you come from?
Sure. I was born in New Jersey, so I'm an East Coast guy. If you can't tell by the way I say coffee.
We tried not to hold it against you.
Coffee or bagel. Those are the two dead giveaways. And I grew up the son of an entrepreneur. So my father was running his own business. He had an import-export and a retail business around fine china and collectibles. So from an early age, I learned what work ethic was all about. And he would have me working with him in a warehouse from 10 years old on. And he had this type of mentality of, to succeed in life, you work harder than everybody else. So he had that work hard mentality versus that work smarter mentality.
Yeah.
And, I incorporated what I knew, and which was work harder. So I always tried to outwork people, not necessarily work smarter than people, which I wouldn't advise to anybody.
Well, I did the same thing, like coming up through what I do and DJing and studio life and all that. I work way too hard and don't use my brain. So
yeah, but you're an engineer.
Yeah, well, yeah, I mean for audio, but I mean as far as like
I mean, I'm a sales guy. I mean, come on.
So no, I can relate with that. I always seem to take the wrong path and work a lot harder than I need to.
Yeah, so it's a great thing that he instilled that strong work ethic with me because it was very useful in life. At the same time, I was introduced to gambling at 11 years old by my uncle at Thanksgiving dinner.
Okay, what was the game?
It was actually, he had this sheet in his pocket and he was watching the football game, and I was wondering why he was on a different side of the house than everybody else. So I went over to him. He was like the cool uncle, and he told me, hey, look at this sheet. I bet on 4 games and I got 3 right. If I get this game right here, I win $100, and I only had to bet 10. And I was like, oh my God, $100. I mean, I was 11. That's
Sure.
a lot of money.
Yeah.
So I ran to my parents and borrowed $10, and I actually won the first bet I made. I picked 4 games at 11 years old and got them right, and I won $100. And that started a 20-year gambling addiction.
Wow.
I could see how that could spur it off, being at 11 years old and, oh, here's $100. So,
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's crazy. Well, and I mean, it's such an interesting thing too, because where it was an uncle and it sort of came from inside the family, like it probably felt safe and it felt like something you should do. You don't see the downside at 11, and so yeah, what an interesting path.
Yeah, I didn't see the downside at 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17. I didn't see the downside for years later. And, I think my uncle was doing it innocently enough.
Sure.
I don't really think he, was trying to poison my mind with such a horrific addiction, which it is. But that is the reality of kind of what happened. And then as I was working for my dad, all the guys in the warehouse gambled. So I'm still like in my teens, 13, 14, 15. They're taking bets for me with their bookies. They're bringing me to the racetrack, and we're betting on horses. I remember it clear as day. I would look at all the horses and I'd pick out the names I like. And I remember I saw Magical Mike, and I'm like, how can I not bet on Magical Mike? That's my name. And the horse won. So I would have these dumb luck things where I would win. But over the 20 years, I was actually a very big loser. I didn't gamble because I was good at it. I gambled because of the high and the rush that I got from it.
Sure, that makes sense. Yeah, and I mean, for me, I had the exact opposite experience. The first time I bet on a horse, same thing. I picked him on a funny name. I think his name was Superhero Steve, and he was at the Belmar Stakes down in San Diego. And is that what it is, Belmar or Delmar? Delmar, I think.
Delmar.
And I went down there. I bet on my horse. He took dead last. That was the end of my horse gambling career. But to your point, like, I mean, you saw success early on, so so immediately you get that high, and it feels or sort of could fuel this addiction. Where in my case, I was immediately beat down, and so I gave up on it.
Yeah, I wish that happened. Yeah. So through those years, the gambling kind of continued. I started gambling with my friends throughout, and then when I went to college, I went to University of Maryland, a small high school, but a large college. Yeah, I bleed red. So go Terps, indeed. And I thought to myself, why bet the games if I could take the bets? And I became a bookie, naturally.
Okay. Sure, yeah.
So my first entrepreneurial venture was in college as a bookie and a drug dealer.
Oh. Okay, there you go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's good to aspire to.
Hey, I wanted to follow in my dad's footsteps. Little did he know that would be the first venture.
But your uncle may have been very proud, to have spawned a bookie.
It's true, but I don't know. I don't think he ever knew. He never knew. But yeah, it became, I was in high school, the clean cut kid, 3 sports, president of student council, planned the prom, was a B+ student, so had kind of the clean cut growing up. But then when I went to Maryland, my roommate got shot with a .357 Magnum.
Oh, wow.
It blew out his tricep by his ex-girlfriend, believe it or not.
Oh.
And when I came back one semester, he had all these pills and all these drugs up on his counter and everything in our dorm room.
So like oxycodone and stuff like
everything.
that. Just everything.
And steroids and everything. And I'm like, what's that? He's like, oh, this one's really good. You should try it. I'm like, oh, okay. I'm like, well, what's that one? He's like, this will take the edge off the first one you take. You should try this too. If that other one's too strong. I'm like, okay, I'll try it. And then I'm like, what are these steroids all about? Oh, we can get really big and really strong. I'm like, all right, let's try them. So I was just like, caution to the wind, was trying everything and anything, including cocaine and including shrooms and all these other drugs. And cocaine really was something that kind of was ingrained, especially after I graduated college. I went to New York City and started working, and cocaine was everywhere in New York City.
Sure.
My background's I'm a DJ. I've been a DJ for 20 years. I had no clue. Well, because I started off as a mobile DJ. I was doing weddings and school dances, and that was kind of my world. And then I started working in the nightclubs, and going into the nightclubs, it blew my mind how much of it was around. Everyone had it. Everyone did it. It was like the norm, and it was very shocking and eye-opening to me. Just to see that in real life, because I had never seen it. I'd never been a part of it, but then all of a sudden it's right in front of me, and like it was kind of like just interesting to see that. Like I don't know how to expound on it, but
they should have renamed it White Club instead of Nightclub, because that's really what it was. And I was doing it every single weekend for 8 years in New York. It was just part of the party scene.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I had, and what turned me onto it was that gambling, eventually when I was gambling for a certain period of time, I wasn't getting that high that I initially got from it. I needed something to get me even higher. So, and the cocaine did it. So cocaine and gambling were a lethal combination for me.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and I suppose I count myself fortunate that I don't tend to have these sort of addictive personalities, but I can see already just in the way you've described it, how it sort of compounds, and then you've got to, continue chasing, and, it's always more and more. And then, and it's, it's ultimately got to crash, because you can only keep going so high, I guess.
Totally. And, the interesting thing is because of that work ethic that was instilled within me throughout all of this, I was still kicking ass at my job. Mm-hmm. So it was very important for me. Like, I wanted to be the best at what I did. And I was very good at sales. And so I still was, crushing it every week. Part of it was because I had this infatuation with money. And it was just and then I was chasing the money. So chasing the high, chasing the money,
Sure.
chasing this, chasing that, always chasing something.
Yeah, regardless of what the addiction was, it's something. You gotta be chasing something.
Something. And everything in my mind was a cost-benefit analysis, and whatever would make me more money out of the situation that I was deciding, that's what I would do.
Yeah, I think I watched a video that you posted about kind of the same, chase or love of money, and you were talking about how you had a high school friend that you were going to be a partner with for 30%, but then you had another partner offer you 50 over here, and that was just the reason why you did it right then and there. I'm going to go for the 50 versus the 30 just because of the numbers.
100%. I had a business opportunity to come out to Utah. I was in New York City. I'd never been to Utah. And I knew one person in Utah because I had worked with her in New York right before 9/11. Yeah, I'm old. But I know I look young, but it's okay. So right before 9/11, we worked together for a year. Then 9/11 happened. She moved back to Utah. And I had a business opportunity to come out here and open up a staffing recruiting business. And she was offering me 50%. And then my good friend from home, who I had worked with for 4 years, he was offering me 30%. And to me, it wasn't a decision. It's 50% is more than 30%. I'm going to Utah. And that's why I left all my friends and family and moved out to Utah, knowing one person here, and started help her start that company that eventually I ended up buying from her.
Okay. Yeah, that's quite the experience leaving New York and coming here. I'm sure it was night and day different.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, a little bit of a culture shock. The New York party scene to the Utah party scene.
Well, it wasn't even the party scene necessarily. It was more like for me, well, the party scene, yes, but the work scene, because all of a sudden I had accumulated all these pinstripe suits, these beautiful watches, like all this these possessions that I was chasing that I thought meant so much to me, but really mean nothing in the big scheme of life. And I would put these pinstripe suit on and go into a meeting in Utah, and people would look at me like, "Who the fuck is this guy?" like this guy.
It's not bad enough. He's from New York. He's got to show up in a nicer suit than any of us have.
No, it's just like this guy obviously is not from here.
Right.
We're not. And there's a big part of the culture here that want to do business with people from here. So especially in the religious areas,
sure.
And there's tons of businesses here that are run. On the core foundations of the religion. So it was very tough for me to break into those companies. But there's also plenty of other businesses that aren't, and I tended to work with those businesses.
Sure.
Well, so as you were mentioning, so you started, it had continued sort of, I guess, this rise, and you kept working and fighting and abusing, whatever drugs and gambling and all this stuff, and we're sort of still ratcheting up. Did that continue here in Utah, or is this where you've sort of found the place to pivot? And you mentioned or that you recognize now the shiny possessions and the this and that, but that sounds like reformed you. At the time, is that where your head was at, or were you still sort of on the upward cycle?
So I had stopped gambling a couple years before I came here, but I hadn't stopped anything else. So I was still in that party scene, and eventually, after the first year here, we were doing really well with the business. And then about a year and a half in, I decided to invest in a bar downtown here called Sandbar.
Oh, okay.
I don't know if you guys were around when that was here, but I invested with these two other guys, and so I was in the party scene. So I was still in the party scene, and I was still doing like the coke, and I was still doing like GHB was actually a big drug of choice that I did with a lot of friends, which is crazy, But yeah, what ended up eventually happening there is the two guys, one of them had a gambling problem, one of them had a pill problem, and ended up bankrupting the place. And, I lost my $60,000 investment. I got half of it back. Yeah. So I was fortunate, but, lose 30G is not fun. But it's ironic, and my life is ironic in general, that the two guys I partner up with, this happens, and it's over gambling and pills. Pills. And, the issues that have been in my life the whole time. So it was kind of apropos that would happen to me. So during that time, I took a trip back. After 5 years, I bought my business partner out. And I wanted to expand back into New York. So I took a trip back there. And I was with some friends, and, some stranger, was arguing with a buddy of mine. I went to break it up, and I got punched in the face. So I had to have surgery on my nose. And when they gave me the bill after the surgery, it was like 10 grand.
Man.
And I looked at the bill and I said, I will never put anything up this nose again. This just cost me $10,000. So I never did coke again after that.
Wow. Well, it's funny how, I think that happens, in life in general, but it can be an unexpected thing like that causes the turn. In your case, I guess, outside of the loss of invested money, there wasn't maybe like a rock bottom for you, like a lot of addicts and suffer through. Although maybe having your nose broken in this fight was your rock bottom or something. But it doesn't sound like you have that experience where, you've lost everything, you're on the streets, you're doing this and that. So, seems like the pivotal moment for you was something much more tangible. It was this idea that, okay, I fixed my nose, my God, I've got to protect it now.
Well, I've had an interesting path because, yes, with that addiction, but that wasn't the only addiction. So I just transferred these things from one addiction to another because at the end of the day, most addicts are hiding something emotionally. They don't want to deal with their emotions. They don't want to deal with reality. So they use it as an escape, the addiction, regardless of what the addiction is. And that was my case as well. I wanted to kind of numb myself.
Yeah.
Right? The stresses of the business. I ended up in a 6-year lawsuit with my ex-business partner. And it was just exhausting that I felt like I was coming into work every day and making a decision every 10 minutes for 10 hours. Like that becomes extremely overwhelming. And I was just exhausted. I just wanted to get away for a few hours. The reality is, though, the reality isn't going to change. Like, whatever the situation you're running from, it's still going to be there when you get back. So doing all this damage to yourself and escaping for a few hours is actually completely useless because it's actually going to damage your mindset and set you even further back when you come back to deal with the reality of your life, the reality
the
of a
problems
lawsuit.
haven't changed.
The reality of your business, the reality of employees, whatever the reality is, that reality is not changing, right? Especially when you run off and try to numb it with some sort of addictive behavior.
Sure.
And for me, that's what it was, and I was still, doing this GHB, but the hardest addiction for me to stop was Adderall. Because I was doing Adderall at work every day.
Yeah.
In my office, it was affecting how I treated my employees, and I didn't treat them well, and I was very short-tempered. I didn't lead from a place of empathy and growth. I led from a place of correction and authority and power. And as I look back on it, I'm not proud of it, but I've certainly, am writing this book to show that there's other ways to handle this. Like the last couple years I ran the business, I didn't run it like that. And I wasn't really doing the last year I wasn't doing Adderall. So I had stopped doing Adderall, and the way I communicated with my employees was much more conversational, much more like leading, like a CEO should be doing.
Sure.
And not so much about, did you close that deal? And, how much money did we make? Money, 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 money. Because that's what it was driven by. The Adderall was like pumping through my brain, my blood, and it's like cocaine in a pill, basically. And I was driven to just make as much money as we could because I had all these lawyer fees. I spent over $1 million on a lawsuit that was over $350K over 6 years. And so it was just about money, money, money. And I was letting all these pressures inside of me build up and letting this Adderall just kind of take things to another level. Well, I was just a douche.
Sure. Yeah, it's hard to realize that without taking a step back and getting out of the situation and kind of just, figuring it out yourself and looking at it from a distance than being right in it. You almost have to do that to kind of realize, I was being kind of a jerk. Didn't you go to like Bali or something and come back and it kind of changed your life? You mentioned something about a flow state, and I think that's part of meditation, right? Is you kind of figure out, I don't know enough about it to talk about it, but
so 2.5 years ago, I went to a retreat called Unconventional Life, and I had never been on a retreat before in my life. I actually thought these retreats and this stuff was like some she nonsense, like crazy people did this stuff. But Bali, I'd always had kind of a fascination with Bali. So when I saw there was an opportunity to go to Bali, I was just like, I don't know what it is, I'm going. And I was at that point miserable with my life. I was running a company that was running me. I was stuck in a lawsuit that I had spent all this money on that I felt like was never ending. And I just was not happy. I was kind of angry. So when I went there, I met a bunch of people, 30 strangers, and I was in this room where they were kind of giving a retreat, the retreat sessions. There were two people on stage talking about flow and living in flow and living this effortless life by making decisions by following your intuition. And if it's not a hell yes, it should be a fuck no in everything that you do in life. And I had never really heard this before, but the way they were explaining it and everything, completely frank, I thought it was bullshit. Yeah. I'm like, this is bullshit. I'm like, nobody can, give me a break with all this. They were describing how they were in corporate America and they were not happy with their lives. And they were successful, but they weren't happy doing what they were doing. I think one of them was running a hedge fund or was working for a hedge fund. The other was like doing something in a nonprofit space, and they were passionate about it, but not really happy as people. And they said they changed their whole life by living this way. And they started studying it and all of this stuff. And I met it with complete resistance, but I talked to them afterwards, and they had told me they had worked with somebody who was going through divorce, and after working with them in 3 months, they were able to settle the divorce and move on with their life. And I was like, yeah, bullshit. I'm like, that's not happening with me. But when I left talking to them and I took a flight back to the U.S., I kept thinking to myself, would it be so bad to live a different way? And I kept repeating that phrase and over to myself. And it was like, no, it wouldn't be. So I decided, screw it. I'm not going to overthink this. I'm going to take their course. They were offering an online course for like $1,000. So I took their course and I dropped everything, and we went through this process of clearing out our limiting beliefs by doing this like tapping. I don't know if you're familiar with, if you've ever heard of tapping, and this EMDR. I think it's called the EMDR thing. And you like tap on the back of your neck, and you're like tapping here, and you're moving your eyes right to left, and you're repeating the limiting beliefs out loud, right? Sounds kooky and crazy, I know. I thought it was too. I still kind of do. But I just did it. Like a limiting belief, like change is difficult, right? Everybody's convinced themselves that changing is difficult, but changing is actually extremely easy, right? The results of the change might be challenging to get to, but the change itself is very easy. We could do it right now, right? But people confuse the two. Right, so they think like losing weight or changing the way they eat is difficult, but it's really not. But they equate changing the way they eat with having ripped abs or something, right?
Right.
But there's no correlation between the two, right? Changing the way you eat, you could change right now. If you want ripped abs, then you have to put a lot of work in. It's going to take time, no doubt, but you can actually make that change now. So I was one of those people that thought any type of change would be very difficult for me. But like you would clear that, so you would repeat that out loud, and you would write it down and all this stuff, and you would clear the belief. And so I did this with a number of beliefs, and then you had this process of implanting positive beliefs. So it would just be the opposite. It would be like change is easy. And you would repeat that mantra, and you would be tapping, and you'd be moving your eyes back and forth. And I did it, even I didn't judge it for the first time in my life. And I slowly started seeing changes happening in my life. And they talk about manifestation and synchronicity and all these things. And like I had never not only heard of those words, but I had never said those words in my life. I never said the word manifest.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm like, what the hell are you talking about? But I literally started manifesting things in my life. Like amazing things started actually happening to me. And I was like, damn, I'm like, this is legit. And it all happened because I dropped my perception of what I had heard from other people about this flow, about people like this, and that goes for things like astrology and energy and meditation and all these things that I had preconceived notions about because the people around me told me that they were bullshit.
Well, it's so interesting that you say that, because I think that honestly that's the hardest part, right? I mean, like you talk about change and other things like that being difficult for people, but really what it is that social pressure. It's allowing yourself to let loose and you know, I guess not judge something like that. Like, so, I mean, what did that take for you? Like, I mean, you seem like a guy that, you know, despite these problems with addiction and things like that, like throughout them, you still fought through. You mentioned that hard work ethic that you developed as a kid. Like, I mean, it seems like you want to be in control. So to sort of like hand yourself over to something like, you know, Eastern mysticism or whatever this is, you know, I mean, it seems like a little out of character that you would just go, you know what, wait, pause. You know, I'm just going to allow this to happen and we'll see what happens. Like, and maybe that was you controlling the situation, you know, by giving yourself permission. But I'm just curious, you know, how that was, because that seems like such a change in sort of direction, you know, and maybe what was going on, you know, at that period or that stage of your life that allowed you to finally do that. Like, I don't know, were you at your wit's end and you just had to find change, or, you know, what was it that actually allowed you to be in a spot to make that change?
I was fucking miserable. Like internally, I was isolating myself. I was humiliated at the things that I was doing that nobody else knew about. I was like self-loathing all the time, and I was just miserable, but I didn't know how to really tell anybody about them. And I was ashamed more than anything. I had actually, during this time, I had went to jail. Nobody knew. I bailed myself out. And then the next day, I immediately went to the internet to see if my mugshot would be there. Because I'm a CEO of a company. I can't let people find out, right? Yeah. But it never appeared. I have no idea why, but it never appeared. And I know a lot of people whose mugshots have appeared on the internet, and they have to pay to get them taken off. Mine never appeared. And That was what I was worried about, though. It wasn't about, oh, I got caught doing this, because I continued to do it.
Yeah.
It was, is anybody going to find me
It's a social
out?
consequence.
I was hiding from myself. And because I was so miserable, and I was open to just trying whatever. And that's what it was.
Yeah.
You know, they talk about the rock bottom. I mean, that was kind of like a rock bottom moment for me, in the sense that I looked at myself and I said, you know, something's got to change or I'm going to commit suicide.
Right. Yeah, no, I guess that makes sense, you know. So, I mean, you know, rock bottom, I guess, comes in all kinds of different forms. And in this case, you know, yours was this sort of self-loathing. You were still able to keep it together as a businessman and keep, you know, things happening. But inside, or, you know, when left to your own devices, you were sort of sulking in all this misery or whatever. So it's great that something like this came along. Now, once you sort of gave yourself permission, I mean, it sounds like you were, you know, looking for something. I need a solution. I have to find my way out of this, or like you said, you know, I'm just going to off myself.
I wasn't looking for a solution, but when the solution was there, I said exactly what you said to myself. I said, wow, this looks like it could be something.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, and it's so interesting. Maybe it wasn't as much then as it is now, but it seems like this kind of stuff is all over now. You know, just in 2019, those sorts of things, there's a lot more, I guess, acceptance of those ideas, you know, these different, you know, work-life balance and meditation and, you know, self, you know, love and things like that. And I don't know how many years ago this was when you discovered that. Three, 4 years ago. So, I mean, we're probably getting into this sort of world that we're in. But even at that, I mean, there's still stigma attached to being that guy. I mean, did you have any problem embracing that in your life and having it just be part of your new persona? Or like, how did you make the shift from guy who was formerly one way to now guy who's enlightened?
I just don't give a shit.
Oh, well, that would be that New Yorker.
That would do it, right?
You know, as many of these things as I might adapt, like, you're never going to take the East Coast out of me,
Sure.
right? Yeah, look, there's some friends of mine that, like, will never understand, right? But they don't need to understand. They're, you know,
It's not about them. It's about
not
you.
about them.
It was
right?
the right solution for you at the right time.
Right. And, like, the goal in life is to evolve. It's not to stay in the same spot all the time, right? And as you evolve, then your interests should evolve as well. You know, I have a chapter in the book called The Habit of Habit Making. And it's really important that we have habits, good habits, but that as we evolve, that we change our habits so they fit. Like, the habits I had 5 years ago don't fit me now. Mm-hmm. Right. And the way that I consistently do that is to tap in to what I call the power of curiosity. And I think it's one of the most underrated things, because as children, we're very curious about everything. But then as we fall into our routines in life, we're going to work, we got the family, we got this, we got that. You know, it's like kind of monotonous in a lot of respects. And we lose that curiosity factor. So tapping into our curiosity, trying out new activities that we've never tried before. Even if we heard it from somebody else, so what? They didn't work for them. Not everything is going to resonate with everyone. Right? So it's about trying different things out and adopting and integrating into your life what works best for you. So a great example for me is like sound baths. I don't know if you're familiar with the sound bath. If you've ever heard of sound bath.
But
I discovered sound baths in Utah, not in Bali, not in California.
The place you would think you'd find
good
them.
old Salt Lake City, Utah. Okay, and basically it's people, and it's also referred to as sound healing and sound bowl therapy. So like there's people who play these sound bowls. They're big bowls, right? They're thousands of dollars, and you know they have this device, and they make sounds by taking this device. It's like a thick,
sort of like somebody that plays a glass with like a wet finger or something. It's sort of that same kind of resonant sound, right?
Huh.
Exactly. But there's multiple bowls, different sizes, make different noises, and some other instruments. And you're laying down, okay, as if you're meditating, laying down for an hour, and they take you through this sound journey. And it's the most relaxing thing ever. You can release all your stress, and actually when I'm in it, I feel like I'm high and I haven't taken a drug, And that is the best part of it. And
well, I've heard that with meditation, that you could actually get to a flow state, and it feels like you're permanently high. Same kind of thing. Like you're just kind of in that realm. And with the sound thing, I'm almost wondering if it's like resonant frequencies, like if it's just certain pitches or harmonics.
Yeah, I think that's more or less what it is. It is. It's that really harmonic sounds and stuff. Yep. It almost puts you in like a trance-like state.
Exactly.
And I haven't done it outside to say I've done like a little bit of some meditation things, some different meditation like tapes and things, and the tapes will sometimes do this sound in the background or whatever, or like in a yoga class, they'll run that kind of stuff. And I mean, it always knocks me out. I feel horrible for the people in the room with me, though, because I always like start snoring. And
you're the snorer.
Yeah, everybody's trying to relax.
I'm like, I'm trying to enjoy the music, and then
I ruin it for everybody. So
I'm like, is somebody gonna nudge that guy?
Someone kick him real quick.
Yeah, no, I had to start taking the yoga class with the old ladies because all the old ladies snore too, so it works out. Well, that's awesome. Well, I think a lot of times it's a matter of finding the right thing for you, whatever that may be. So in this case, you found your way to Bali, and then you found later the sound journeys and things like that. But I mean, that's what it took for you in that moment to make the change that you needed to make in your life. And for other people, it could be something else. Maybe they get a puppy or whatever, But I mean, effectively, it's the same thing, and it's converting the way you think. It's getting rid of those, thoughts and things that control you or keep you from advancing or moving forward in your life. And so being able to find something like that actually you could use as a tool to move yourself forward is really interesting. It's awesome. So, and I'm grateful you found it. That's awesome.
Yeah, thank you. I think for me, it started with the flow stuff. And then the flow opened up my mind to, all right, I'm going to go to this sound bath. And you know what? I don't need to tell anybody about it. I'm going to go because if, at that point, if you have a lot of us carry around this big ego, we don't want our friends making fun of us or whatever. And, but I try it out and then I'm like, wow, this is great. And then I find some other people who enjoy it and then slowly integrate things into your life. Like I like to say the smallest change can have the biggest impact. So like just trying something new and getting out of your comfort zone. It doesn't mean you have to do it the rest of your life. It doesn't mean it will resonate with you, but it might.
Yeah.
And the only way to kind of grow and evolve is to tap into that curiosity, turn that into action, and then that action can turn into connection. And that's where the magic happens, when you can get connected to people, over things that you really enjoy. And, maybe it is, you talked about getting a dog. Maybe you get a dog, then you're going to the dog park, all of a sudden you're talking to all these new people who have dogs and everything, and you're all of a sudden interested in this whole other thing, But for me, it's about, though, you do, and you mentioned it before, and, again, people might think it's shishi or whatever, but you cannot be present for other people unless you're present for yourself. Mm-hmm. And unless you treat yourself well and make sure you find time for yourself. This notion that nobody has time is complete bullshit. Everybody's got time. It's just a matter of how you allocate it. Yeah. And if you take time for yourself, and you got to love yourself. It might sound corny or whatever, but if you can't love yourself, how are you going to be a great leader at your company? How are you going to love your family? How are you going to be optimal in those areas? How are you going to be a great friend if at the end of the day you really don't love yourself? Yeah. And I never believed that for 30 plus years of my life, but I believe it now.
Yeah. No, I think, and I think you mentioned, and you're talking about like kind of this interesting subject that I don't think a lot of people get into. And you mentioned it, it's been a minute, so I'll just kind of go back a few minutes. But it was this idea of change or evolution. I think that, you see so many of these sort of aspirational videos and things on YouTube and whatever, all these, Tony Robbins types or whatever, trying to push you to your limit or whatever. And so many of us resist all that stuff. Like we're all looking, but we never do. And I think that, sort of being able to, I guess, allow yourself to do something and get through that little social barrier or whatever it is. You don't want to look stupid in front of your friends, or, you don't want to be perceived as now the guy that's the yoga master or whatever, I think that little moment, whatever that is such a tremendous hurdle for people. In your case, maybe you were forced a little bit into making that choice sort of by your condition and everything else, but how would you encourage people to sort of fight through that invisible barrier, or the thing that keeps you from doing what it is you want. Like you might watch the videos, you might do all the learning on YouTube, you might do all this and that, but you never actually make the move. You get very Gary Vaynerchuk screaming in your ear all day, but you never actually do what he says. What do you think it is that sort of might help somebody make that step?
Well, the first thing is don't be so hard on yourself, right? Everybody's ready at a different time. But what harm is it in exploring something new? Mm-hmm. What harm is it in acting on something? You have to take that first step.
Yeah.
It all sounds nice and good and she and blah, 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 but you have to take that first step. And that first step can be different for a lot of people. Like for somebody, it could be going to a meditation for the first time. It could be taking a hike in the mountains, right? Mm-hmm. Getting out of the house, getting out in the environment. And like the environment can, like I just recently moved to California to be close to the ocean.
Sure, yeah. Proximity to beach, man. That's
I love
the
the ocean is tranquil for me. Mm-hmm. It calms me down. It's peaceful. Getting outside every day and going to the ocean changes my entire mood. Yeah. So you have to be in the right mindset to do that. But if you're, isolating yourself and you have no connection with other people, then you're never going to get there. So like I really advise, like what worked for me is finding my tribes. I think it's really important that people find their tribes, okay? And what I mean by that is, I went to Bali and I found this group of people in unconventional life. But before that, I was part of this entrepreneurial tribe called YEC. It's called Young Entrepreneurial Council. It's like for 40 and under, doing over $1 million in revenue, right? And there are and I was an entrepreneur. So it was great for me because when I had entrepreneurial challenges, I had nobody to lean on before. But now I have all these other entrepreneurs who are part of this group that understand the pressures that we deal with every day, that when your girlfriend, your spouse, your husband, like they might not understand it because they're in a different world, right? So it's important to have people close to you that can relate to you, and you can kind of speak to about certain things. And I believe that, I have many tribes, and that's really what's allowed me to be fulfilled. Because like if there's an entrepreneur issue, I have an issue running a business, I can lean on those people. If I want to go and work out at the gym, I have all these people at the gym who know me, who I can work out at the gym. If I want to go travel, I know a bunch of people who enjoy traveling, and we can bond over traveling. Yeah. And it's on and on and on. The sound bath thing, right? So hiking. It could be a hiking group. It could be a dog walking group. I mean, it could be anything. You can go on meetup.com and you could find groups that share the same interests as you. And then it's a lot easier for you to go and do something because then you have connection.
Common conversation, talking points, all that stuff.
Exactly. And you can slowly integrate yourself into taking action. If you don't want to take that step immediately of going and trying a sound bath because you feel weird about it.
Sure.
The bottom line is, though, it's your life. Fuck what everybody else thinks.
Yeah. I kind of love that because I think it's one of those things that people... I see so many people that keep doing the wrong things all the time, even if it's to their own, self-detriment. They do it just because that's who they are. They've always been that person, so they're going to stay that person, and that is what they are. And it is exactly what you said. It's, they're too busy wrapped up in what everybody perceives them as, so they stay that person or stay stagnant, even though they really could be exploring all these other avenues. And, I even experience that a lot in my own life, like I'm sort of known for one thing, but I have all these other interests that I won't chase down because, I'm kind of this guy, and so I think it's worth noting. And I don't know that I can give anything so profound as to help anybody get through that on their own. It's like you said, you kind of find it when you need it and when you're ready, there is no time. You're not going to hit it at 38 and a half. It might be at 40 or it could be at 29. It could be, whenever whenever you need to find it. I always say that it took a whole lifetime of decisions to get to sitting here at this table with you. This didn't happen in the last week or the last month making this work. It literally took 39 years of me making decisions to wind up at this table with you. And by saying that or sort of thinking about it that way, it helps me not look backwards and go, oh, God, I should have done this differently. Or, I could have met Michael 5 years ago if I'd have done this or, whatever. It allows me to not have that regret or that doubt. And I think that's, a nice way of thinking about things. Because even with you, you sort of had to experience all the adversity you faced in order become the human you became today. Like, you wouldn't
Sure.
be this guy if you hadn't faced all that first.
Sure. I mean, I had a huge ego. I mean, nobody had a bigger ego than me. And a lot of people allow their ego to stand in the way of their fulfillment.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that happens a lot, and it's unfortunate. And people probably write whole books on this.
Yeah. I mean, the amount of time people spend on the what ifs in their life. What if this happens? What if this happens? What if this happens? What if this happens? The amount of energy spent on that, 99% of the what ifs never happen. I went through my whole life thinking about what if this, what if that, what if this, with this lawsuit. I was like, oh, I'm going to go bankrupt. What if this? I was like pulling money out of the bank, and I researched, banks I could hide the money at that the Fed, this is dead serious, that the Fed would not regulate. And so I found banks there's 5 banks in the U.S. that are founded by Indian reservations that there's no authority over the Fed have no authority. Wow. One's in San Francisco. So I remember clearly taking $60,000 out of the bank, putting it in my suitcase and carry-on, and flying to San Francisco and opening an account and putting it in there in case I lost my lawsuit and had to go bankrupt.
Then you would have
so
60
I would
grand
at
to
least
start
have
with.
60G to start something with.
Right.
Well, at least
I did all of that. I did it. It was all wasted energy, wasted time. Deal with our reality and what we can control. And what we can control is actually taking the first step and tapping into that curiosity and realizing if you're not happy, try something new. Make a shift. It can be the smallest thing, but that smallest shift can have the biggest impact.
Lots of guys, like military guys. I host a podcast or work with a podcast group that does a lot of military work, and a lot of the guys there, they say that, like, just even training new habits, start with something simple early on in the day. That's why all of them make their bed to the point where they can drop a quarter off of it, because that once that's done, first project's done for the day, move on to the next one, It kind of is like you start the day off with something completed and you can move on from there. And it sounds simple and hokey and cheesy, but it could be all you need to kind of get that forward momentum going. Is just make your bed in the morning,
No, it's actually 100%. Do you? You're not on my Instagram, but
no,
I'm like, are you watching me? Because
we'll follow you here.
This morning, no, because it's called. I don't know if you've read the book Eat the Frog. So Eat the Frog is a great book. It's a very, very easy read. It's not better than Chasing the High, but it's a great book. But it really, the whole premise of the book is doing the most challenging thing first thing in the morning and getting it over with. So I now wake up and run to the coffee shop, have my coffee, and run back.
There you go.
And so I've already gotten my run out of the way. So if I give myself excuses during the day of why I don't want to go to the gym, well, at least I've run a couple miles in the morning.
Yeah.
And it's the same thing with the bed, it's very similar with the bed. It's about getting something done early in the morning that you don't necessarily want to do, but then you've already gotten an accomplishment off and you already have some positive momentum going into the day.
Yeah. I mean, even if it's like something simple like doing the dishes, like putting it off. Now it's done. You feel good. It's out of your way, move on to the next thing. It's 100%. Crazy.
So let's, I guess, pivot a little bit and start getting into the book. Once again, the book is Chasing the High. This is what it looks like. You can find it on Amazon, every place where books are found. Let's talk a little bit about, I guess, what pushed you to actually write this book. Obviously we've talked about some of these life experiences that obviously went into this, but let's talk about, what the purpose of the book is and what it meant to you and what it's for and who it's for and all that good stuff.
Yeah, being part of a bunch of entrepreneur communities, being around a lot of entrepreneurs, and being an addict, a lot of people are suffering in silence. And the way the world is set up now with, the internet, with technology, there's less and less human connection out there. I feel like time and time again, I was kind of told, people would kind of be like, man, you have an amazing story, man, you should really talk about this, you should do this. I feel like subconsciously it was like in the back of my mind.
Sure. But
when somebody presented at an entrepreneur event I was at, that their company helps people write books, I kind of put a feeler out there, which led to, you know what, I'm going to do this. I'm going to do it. You know, I was curious, so I followed my curiosity. I investigated a little bit about the book. I knew I was going to sell my company. So I'm like, you know what, this will be a great way for me to transition out of my company into something new. I want to help entrepreneurs who are dealing with addiction. And so that's a program that I'm starting. In another month, it'll be rolled out. But I thought a great way to get there would be to establish myself as somebody who's made massive change, who was an angry East Coast guy, okay, who on the outside it looked like had everything, but was completely miserable, had multiple addictions, lied to everybody, including myself, was not happy and content with where I was, and was involved in this lawsuit that was fueled with emotional decision making that I was just couldn't get out of my own way. And let me put it out there so people know there's another way. Okay, there is a better way to go about these things. I didn't really have that mentor or person to lean on when I was going through all these challenges. And so I feel like this book can be a good conduit for those people, but not only those people, like anybody who wants to really shift their life and make change in their life. There's a lot of great tangible steps that they can take, that they can incorporate into their life. So that's why I wrote it. I wanted to, I was really, the redeeming qualities of finding a $100,000 software engineer, a $120,000 job had left for me. Sure. They weren't there for me anymore. They had driven me all those years because all I cared about was money. But I just, after losing $1 million in a lawsuit or spending $1 million on it, like I had millions and I lost millions. And when I had it, I was more miserable than now when I don't have it.
Right.
So, you know, these are just different things that I feel can add value to other people. And I feel like writing the book and speaking about this can have a bigger impact on people than, you know, finding people jobs that they can find on their own at that level.
Sure.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. So, you know, I mean, your experience is that of an addict and finding your way through it. And that's sort of what fed your... you know, sort of fed your story. But what I was thinking, just as you were saying that, was, you know, how valuable this book must be for people who, you know, also don't have these mentors, like you mentioned, because, you know, for so many people, even if they don't have, you know, like a chemical dependency or something like that, they still might be addicted in a sense, in loose quotes, to you know, their position in life or their status or whatever they've achieved so far, and they, you know, their self-limiting thoughts are keeping them from moving forward. And you know, I know for me, finding mentors and finding people to sort of help me take that next step in business and life and whatever has been a challenge. You know, finding the right people. You know, I met a million great people along the way, but finding those people have been difficult. And like I found recently a book called Built to Sell that is a guy that
I've read it.
Yeah, and like I work in advertising and marketing, and so reading his book was like reading my autobiography. You know, so for me it was like super impactful. So even though I didn't have him as a mentor, you know, like in a real sense, like I've never spoken to the man.
Write him.
Yeah. Well, I probably should, right?
You should.
I mean, he probably gets a lot of these, but you know, nonetheless.
Don't assume he does.
Yeah.
This is what I've
self-limiting. Look at me.
There you go. There you go. Look, we're playing it out right here. We didn't even plan this.
And so, but the point I was trying to make is that, you know, unbeknownst to him, he sort of has become a mentor to me because he spoke the right language, had the right experiences, had the, you know, the whatever it was that it took to appeal to me. I've read a number of other business books in sort of the marketing sphere, the advertising sphere that don't have that impact on me, but that one did. And so I think your book, you know, sort of in that same respect, could act as mentor or as guide for somebody who doesn't have it in their life, who has become reclusive or something because of, you know, the general state of unhappiness they're in or whatever it is. And so I think a book like this is really important. Just, you know, I mean, if for no other reason than to show people sort of, I guess, a bottom to the top, or, you know, illustrate any of these sort of paradigms that we see in life, you know, people that have experienced adversity and come to overcome it. I think a book like this can be really valuable for those people. So well done doing that book.
Thank you.
Can you elaborate on the writing process? You said you had a company kind of do it for you. Was it more like, hey...
They didn't do it for me. Basically, they help authors who want to self-publish.
Okay.
So, in other words, you don't have a publishing deal.
Sure.
Right? So, like, all the marketing and everything is on me.
Okay.
I have to do it all. It's not sitting on a bookshelf. I have to get it out there. So that's why I'm on this podcast tour, so to speak, and doing an event tomorrow night, and having events in different cities and things of that nature. But the company itself, basically what they do is they partner up with you, and you block out like 6 to 7 2-hour sessions where you're speaking to them about your story and about what you want to write about. So they dictate all this. They ask you some questions. You go through everything, and then they transcribe it all. And then they kind of put it on paper for you, and then they send it to you. In my case, it didn't necessarily sound like me, like when they did that.
Yeah.
So I ended up rewriting almost all of it.
Okay.
But I never would have been able to do it unless they first had it on paper for me.
Give you kind of like the bullet points of where to go through and go from there.
Exactly. But
Yeah.
anybody who wants to write a book, I would strongly advise speak the book first into a microphone, into a recorder, then have somebody transcribe it. You can find people on Fiverr. You can just go on there, for $5 an hour, like in the Philippines or something.
Yeah.
And they're pretty, like 90-95% accurate.
I think the
And
first
that'll
3
help you.
episodes we did, we had someone from Fiverr do
Yeah,
do
say,
it.
yeah. Well, it was through another platform, but yeah, same idea. Yeah, we had a woman in the Philippines transcribing the show, so
Yeah.
it's the same idea.
Yeah, exactly. And then that's a great start for you. And then, it's a relatively challenging process, but also easy at the same time if you do it those ways. And then, and then they helped me with obviously the cover and the writing of the layout and everything like that. And the cover is actually very important to me because that's a picture from the top of Mount Kilimanjaro, which I climbed in 2016.
Oh, nice.
And my good friend, Mark Weiss, God bless his soul, is a Navy SEAL, did 6 tours for us. He climbed it 2 months before I did, and 2 days after he climbed it, he drowned, unfortunately, off the coast of Tanzania.
Oh, man.
He was an active SEAL. And I remember when I got up there and turned around and took the picture, there's this beaming shot of sunlight just coming right down. And I thought to myself, holy shit, this guy, because he was like MacGyver. I'm like, this guy figured a way how to manipulate the sun and point it right in my direction. Because I had this flag I made with his picture on it that I carried with me the entire time. So that cover of the book really meant a lot to me. So I was just ecstatic when they were able to actually use the photo I
took for that.
Yeah, that's awesome. No, it's a great photo.
Yeah.
Can you talk about that hike and the process of climbing Mount Kilimanjaro, if I could even say it?
Sure. I partnered with the Leukemia Lymphoma Society. I've raised a lot of money with them, over $100,000 with them.
We just did a fundraiser for a local person here.
You did? That's great.
Yeah.
That's great. I probably donated to their, I get hit up all the time, because I actually ran for their Man Woman of the Year competition in 2016. That's probably what you guys donated to.
I did the audio for an event. They were doing a live podcast. Jason Woodland and
oh, cool.
I can't remember the other lady's name that had. She actually had the cancer and was able to kind of get in remission and has been promoting it since.
It's great. Yeah. It's great. It's a great cause. So this was called Climb for a Cure. So we went. It was 8 days. It was 6 days up and 2 days down, and we had porters carrying all our stuff, and you had to raise a certain amount of money to go ahead and do it, and flew to Africa and over 18,000 feet. It was amazing. It tests you, but I was pretty confident that I would be okay doing it because I had run 4 marathons before, and I hadn't run a marathon in over 5 years, but it's all mental in my eyes, right? And I knew the mentality you need to be able to do something like that. And once you have that mentality, your body will follow your mind. Yeah. Our minds, like in everything that we've been talking about today, including the climb to Kilimanjaro, but all the other things, our minds are the most powerful thing we have. They're stronger than any part of our body. And we can convince ourselves of anything positive or negative. And so, that's why it's important to be feeding positive information into our minds. Right? I used to listen to sports radio all the time. I still listen to it sometimes. It's entertaining, but it's meaningless. It's not like advancing my thought process. But now I temper that with podcasts. Like I hadn't listened to a podcast till 2.5 years ago, and I listen to positive podcasts. I listen to a guy, Lewis Howes, and he has this School of Greatness podcast where he interviews people who've achieved great things and overcome certain challenges in life, and that's really inspiring to me. And there's several other podcasts as well that I listen to, but they're positive and they make me think. Mm-hmm. And it's important to, if you don't, to either read or to have that and not to go listen to the damn news, which is filled with negative shit all the time and will just put you in a bad mood. It'll put you up, make you upset.
I deleted the news app on my phone because I was sick of every day hearing this, just starting off depressed. Yeah.
We're going to go to war with Iran. What else is new? I mean,
So I just pulled it all the way off, and I don't even tune into CNN or anything like that anymore. Very rarely do I even know what's going on in the news, just because I try to avoid it.
Actually, sort of with all the vitriol that happened in sort of the last presidential election, I just bailed on it then.
Yep.
I stopped watching the morning news. I mean, here in Utah, the news is pretty biased anyway, so it's kind of hard to listen to a lot of it. But outside of that, I got so tired of it. Just everybody's fighting about everything, and it's whatever. But I couldn't deal anymore. So I started just getting up in the morning, and I would either listen to an audiobook or put on some music or whatever, and I totally checked out of the morning news.
Yeah.
So because it was just too much. So we're starting to get kind of late in the show. So let's just sort of as one more big promo for the book. Is there a story or an anecdote or something you could share from the book that might be a good lesson or a good thought? Something that you'd like to share with sort of the listening audience, or anything else about the book, even if it's process or whatever you've got, just something that you'd like to talk about the book.
Well, sure. There's many things in the book. I think some of them I described. I'm really big into the habit of habit making. But one thing that we kind of created is a movement called activation, and I'm actually wearing this little bracelet here.
Cool.
That I am activated. And this started with some entrepreneurial friends, but it started really as a joke. We were heading up to Eden, to Powder Mountain, where we have an event with all these entrepreneurs from across the country every year. And my buddy turns to me and he's like, "Hey, I'm going to activate everybody at this event." And I'm like, "What the hell are you talking about?" And I'm like, "That sounds kind of creepy. What do you mean you're going to activate everybody?" He's like, "No, I'm just going to make sure everybody's having the best time, that they're present, that they're not worrying about work, that they're high energy and all this stuff." And I'm like, "You know what? That sounds pretty cool." I said, "I'm going to activate more people than you." And my competitive fire came out. So we just started activating all these people, and the energy level just really rose and everything. And when we left that event, all the entrepreneurs, who were friends of ours, all started contacting us and said, "Hey, how can we support this? We love this. This activation stuff is great." And so we decided to make it into kind of like a movement. And we came up with 5 principles of what activation means. And I try to instill these in my life every day. And it's the what we call the PAPER principle. And it just stands paper, P-A-P-E-R. So it stands for being positive. Every day you wake up, be positive about what you're doing. Be authentic to who you are. It doesn't matter who's around you and what other people think about you. Be authentic, right? Be passionate about whatever you're doing. Give it 110%. Even if you're not a big fan about it, bust your ass. Do the best that you can. And if you're not a fan of what you're doing, then change it. Don't do it again. If you leave your job, if you're not happy with it, don't bitch and moan about it. The E stands for being empathetic. Pay it forward. Whatever you do for others, they will do. It'll come back to you. So I always believe in you pay it forward, it'll always pay you back. And the R stands for resilience. Be resilient in life. You're going to get knocked down in life. That's life. Shit happens. It's not about how many times you get knocked down. It's about getting back up and dusting yourself off and moving forward. You're the only one who can pave your trail. Not the government, not your mother-in-law, not your friends, you. And so take that control back.
Yeah, I love that. I think that's a great note to leave on. So one more time, our guest has been Michael G. Dash. His book, Chasing the High, is available now in Amazon and I presume bookstores, places like that down the road. And right now, where was the other place you mentioned you could get it?
ChasingTheHighBook.com.
Okay.
And then also you can go to my website, Michael G. Dash, where you could find out more about my FATE program if there are any entrepreneurs or business leaders who are listening to this that are dealing with addictive or compulsive behaviors. I'm starting a 10-week program.
That's awesome. You're also available for speaking, coaching,
Yes.
that kind of stuff. And you can learn all about that at michaelgdash.com, right?
Correct. Yeah.
Anywhere on the social media channels? I heard you mention the Gram earlier.
Yeah. I'm on them all. M-1 on Instagram and Michael.1 on Facebook, and you can find me on LinkedIn, and those are the three main platforms.
Great. Cool. Well, hey, unless you've got anything else, I think that's it. So thanks to everybody who tuned in on the live stream. Thanks to everybody who continues to download the show and be a part of our show. Please make sure you're sending in questions and things like that so we can kind of keep things moving. If you have ideas for guests or guests you'd like to see on the show, let us know. And I guess with that, that's it. Anything else, Mike?
No, I think that's it.
Just give a 5-star rating to the show.
Yeah,
that's
what
right.
you said.
Rate, like, subscribe, share, tell your mom, tell your friends, everybody.
So thanks for making
Thanks so
time,
much,
Mike.
Michael. Really appreciate you.
Thank you. Appreciate it.